Well, hello, everyone. My name is Sam Jones, and I'm from the MBA Career Management office at Wharton, and I'm thrilled to be one of our presenters today for Do Our Students Have Callings?
Hi, everyone. I'm Jessica Cass. I'm also in the MBA Career Management office, and I'm one of the advisors, and I look forward to talking today.
We want to accomplish these four things today in our presentation. So the first is to learn a little bit about the calling research. The second is to explore our calling and mission journey. So this is the process that we went through to create this program. The third is to experience part of our calling and mission workshop. The fourth is to share the results from the work that we've done and the study that we've done around calling and mission. And then lastly, we want to just save lots of time for question and answer for you at the end. So let's hop right into a little bit about calling to set the stage. Prior to 2007, there were only about 20 published research articles about calling in the academic literature. And since that time, we're now at over 150 and closing in on 200 published articles. So this is a topic that's become more and more interesting to researchers and has really begun to permeate more just kind of popular non-academic spaces as well. And in 1997, this article that we have here about jobs, careers, and callings was published, and it was actually done here at the University of Pennsylvania. And the researchers really found that people either categorized their job into about a third, which was a calling, which is this focus on fulfilling work, societally useful work. Some people view their jobs as careers, which is really about advancement. And then other people viewed their work as a job. This is something if they didn't need to get paid, they wouldn't do. And generally, a third of people are in each bucket. And when we talk to our students about calling, we share a little bit about this research. And as we're setting up our calling workshop, our calling and mission workshop for our students, we just kind of invite them to try it on and see if it's something that might feel right to them as a way to think about their work. So we don't tell our students you should have a calling, you must view it this way. But as we unpack some of the research I'm about to show you, we do let them know that the probability of you having better outcomes in your career is commensurate with this view of viewing work as a calling. When we reviewed the literature on calling, we found all of these amazing benefits that correlate to having a stronger sense of calling and viewing your work as a calling. And they range from an increased sense of well-being to being more likely to find meaning at work. And the one with the arrow here, which I think is really relevant to us as career services professionals, is that people are more planful and they're more confident and they're more decided in their career decisions. They're also just more likely to have these positive expectations for their careers, more likely to have strong fit and going through, more likely to be satisfied with their lives. So there are just so many benefits with viewing your work as a calling. We wanted to really educate our students about this and really let them understand the benefits and weigh some of the benefits for themselves. And then we're also really honest with our students that there are some dark sides of calling. And these can be workaholism and burnout, right? Many of us have probably faced this at different points in our careers. We love what we do, so we give too much of ourselves to our work and we start paying less attention to other things that are important, whether they're relationships or health and well-being. Another risk sometimes is people not being fairly compensated because they love the work so much, they don't ask for raises or they don't ask for promotions. Another is, and this is a real dissatisfier for people, is when they have a calling, but that they can't enact the calling. And some people have raised the question, is calling a privilege? And I think that's a really worthwhile debate. Whether it's systemic and societal reasons that someone can't fulfill what they feel called to do, or if it's ability and training. But there can be a deep frustration when you feel like you have a calling, but you can't enact it. And then for many of our students, we can see this last one at the bottom where people can develop rigid career-making decisions, meaning that they only want to have their calling now. And they're not really viewing their careers as something that's progressive. So this is, some of the dark sides of calling, as well as some of the benefits of calling. But the research would say the benefits really outweigh the dark side. And then another part for us as we were studying calling is we got to see some corporate research. And we had a group an internal consulting group at MTV come and present to our staff. And they presented this model that they call job love. And they look at the different reasons that someone loves their job. And what they found is across multiple generations. So this study was done a few years ago where they looked at millennials, Gen X, and boomers. They found that the number one reason someone loved their job was they felt that it was a calling or it deeply tapped into a passion that they have. So for us, as we were looking at this topic of calling and mission and thinking about starting a workshop that we would do with our students, we really brought this research together and saw both academic research and corporate research was pointing towards calling. And so that led us to our calling and mission journey. And I'll turn things over to Jess to talk about that.
Great, thanks so much, Sam. Yeah, it's great to go through that research. And I'm going to take you through our calling and mission journey, which has been about 5 years. And we'd like to think it's evolved into something special that we'll go through with you. And don't worry about everything on the slide. I'm about to take you through slide by slide. All right, we can go to the next one, Sam. Okay, so let's go back about 5 years to 2017. And we were hearing from our MBA students that they wanted more support from our MBA Career Management office around self-assessment and goal setting. So we wrote a business case to incorporate calling and mission content into our existing Career Fit program. So our Career Fit program is our only MBA Career Management mandatory training that all MBAs go through. It had incorporated a career assessment results that they would go through, and that was called, the career assessment was called Career Leader. So we were proposing adding calling and mission content into that. And we actually proposed for a year-long experiment where we were exploring if we put a systemic and intentional emphasis on having students get in touch with their personal calling and mission, what would those potential positive benefits be? Sam was just talking about a few of those. So personalization, clearer career paths, increased performance in interviews, increased satisfaction in their jobs as alumni. And we pitched this business case and proposal to the graduate division leadership, and they were very supportive of this. So Sam and I got to work. We spent countless hours this year doing everything. We were combing through research articles, brainstorming ideas, architecting really meaningful self-assessment exercises for our students, and the result was a redesigned Career Fit program. And ultimately, we actually opted not to roll it out this year in 2017 because we just wanted to validate it with a little bit more data. So instead, we conducted an alumni survey this year where we were asking questions around calling and mission, gathering important information that would lay the groundwork for future findings. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so now let's fast forward a year. Now it's 2018, and we are excited and ready to pilot that redesigned Career Fit content that we created the year before. You can actually see pictures of Sam and I below. So in 2018, during pre-term, we piloted the redesigned Career Fit workshop to a quarter of all incoming MBA students. So we're going to call them the treatment group. And the treatment group went through a 90-minute workshop where we did a brief lecture portion where we introduced calling and mission, allowed them to try it on, a lot of the things that Sam was just talking about, but we spent the bulk of the time having the students work in pairs on exercises where they could interview each other, they could talk about their calling and mission, and potentially brainstorm career options and actions that related to their statement. So they went through that course, and then the remaining 3/4 of the class went through the original career fit that I had mentioned earlier. After the workshop, I should have mentioned in our treatment group workshop, it culminated with them filling out a survey at the end of the session where they had refined their calling and mission statement. And then throughout the course of the year, we sent 3 nudge emails to the treatment group to allow them to apply and access their calling and mission statement and use it during different points throughout recruiting. And that pilot went great. We opted to actually roll it out the next year in 2019, but to half the class. So the treatment group became half the class, and we basically did the same thing. All right, next slide, please. All right. Okay, so 2020, big year, interesting year for everybody. We had 2 years of rich pilot data, and we were confident now that we wanted to launch Career Fit to all MBAs, to the incoming class. And the pandemic created an immediate need for us to figure out how are we going to deliver this content in a different way, because we couldn't be in the classroom anymore. So Sam and I worked very closely with Wharton technology leaders to come up with the best solution. And we came up with a 2-part series. So we had Career Fit Part 1, which is an online training. It was asynchronous that I'll go into more detail in a second. And then Part 2 was Career Fit Part 2 is a live virtual workshop. And all MBAs went through this. So let me go through the Career Fit Part 1, which is the online training, which you could see some snapshots of this in the middle picture. It was a 50-minute online training that was in Canvas, and the participants could go through this in their own time. It was made up of 18 mini modules, and the modules consisted of videos. So Sam and I spent a good part of our summer recording videos. We had to purchase ring lights and microphones and get tips from the experts on how to, record the best videos, and we did that. And then there also were a bunch of engagement activities. So the students had to do true or false statements and polls just to keep them moving along. And at the end of the Career Fit Part 1, they actually drafted their own calling and mission statement. So then in Part 2, we, rather than having it in the classroom, this was over Zoom. It was a live virtual workshop where we did a very brief lecture portion, which basically a best practice that we learned is that you basically want to recover anything that has been done online just to help reinforce the ideas that you were teaching online. So we quickly reviewed everything from Career Fit Part 1, and then used the bulk of the time for the students to be in breakouts. Again, they were in partner exercises, very similar to the ones from the previous 2 years, just adapted for Zoom. That went really well, and we did the nudge emails again, but to the entire class this year. We've also this year added a calling and mission section to our My Action Plan, which is our personalized online recruiting platform, so they can always get reinforcement around that there. And we also launched a Career Fit Part 3 this spring, where we partnered with Professor Emeritus Reed to lead a workshop where students had the ability to build upon their strengths and potentially revise their statement even further. So what's coming up next year? We like the shift to Career Fit Part 1 and 2. So we're going to keep Career Fit Part 1 on Canvas, and we will be sending out a link of that for you if you want to play around. We have a demo site for you, and we're going to knock on wood, but our plan is to move Career Fit Part 2 away from Zoom and back into a live classroom, assuming we are allowed to do that. And then we're also continuing to partner with faculty, gather endorsements to use in our materials and marketing plan. And then we're also working this year to develop some training and performance support so that our colleagues and other advisors can incorporate calling and mission into their everyday conversations with students. So that is the journey. so we can move on now. So now we're going to give you a very brief experience of the workshop that our students went through in Zoom last year. And just as a reminder, we did this over Zoom to all the incoming students. We did it at the cohort level. So we facilitated 12 separate sessions. There were about 75 students in each session. And as a reminder, they had to complete this Canvas online training prior to attending. So now we're going to go, you guys are in student mode. So welcome to the workshop. We are excited to be with you today. And as you know, in MBA Career Management, we are here not only to support you in finding career success, but also career satisfaction. And so we want to talk with you today about looking at how work impacts overall happiness. So let's look at this study. Since 1972, there's been a survey conducted every 2 years for people living in the US. And note that people did not have to be Americans. And they're exploring topics, attitudes around overall life happiness. And our office actually conducted a regression study to look at how work satisfaction played into overall life satisfaction. So I'm going to ask you all to open up your chat right now. And in the chat box, I want you to take a guess. What % of life happiness is accounted for by work satisfaction? And the other things we were comparing to were income, your overall health, status of being with a life partner. So what do you think? Pull out your chat. Any guesses? All right, 36, 33, 65. Wow, that's great. 78. Wow, we do spend a lot of time at work. Okay, let's go to the next slide and see where we landed. All right, so year over year, thank you all for participating. Year over year, the largest predictor of life happiness is work satisfaction, ranging from 32% to 35%. And we wanted to share this with you just to reinforce how important it is for us to just take some time and self-reflect on your career direction. This is your life. We want you to be happy. All right, let's go to the next slide, please, Sam. And as you think about your career, it's really a series of roles over time that you're going to go through. And I'd like you to envision yourself. Here you are, you're coming in with all your pre-MBA experience. You're about to embark on your MBA internship search. What do you want that to look like? Then you're going to go into your first job out of school. Mid-career goals, long-term goals, it's all there ahead of you. And the calling and mission, your calling and mission, is going to be a common thread that's going to help you with between all of these roles. And one thing to take note of is right away, your first job or your internship, you might not be perfectly matched to your calling and mission right now, and that's okay. But we would encourage you to use it as a guide as you venture forward. All right, so let's go to the next slide, please. So let's define what we mean by calling and mission. And you definitely saw this in our Canvas site, but let's just revisit it. We define calling and mission as using one's strengths to engage in meaningful work that makes an impact. And when we look at calling, we're looking at the intrinsic, the internal strengths. What are your motivators, your passions? What are you driven by? And then on the mission side, we're looking at the external. What impact do you want to have? What type of legacy? Who do you want to be impacting? And all of these elements make up your calling and mission. Next slide, please. Okay. And as you recall, we invited you to use this template to draft your calling and mission statement. So my calling and mission is to use my blank strengths in order to blank. And I'm gonna get out of my role for a second just to let you know, in the Canvas site, when students were introduced to this, they not only had a chance to draft their statement, but if they were feeling stuck or wanted some inspiration, we had some sample statements that alumni had written, some sample words they could use, just to give them some prompts. All right, next slide, please. So now I'm going to walk you through the breakouts that we had the participants go through. And at this point, we invited our students to access the Career Fit Part 1 that they had done before, because this is where their calling and mission statement was housed. All right, next slide. Okay, so now I'm just going to walk you through how the breakout worked. And Sam, if you can, you could push, we have a detailed participant guide, and in our live Zoom session, we actually pushed out the participant guide in the chat. So we're going to try to do that. There it is. So if you guys want, you can open it up now or just save it for later. But essentially, we took all the participants and used the random breakout feature in Zoom and put them into random breakouts of 2 people each. And they spent 35 minutes working in pairs. And they went through the participant guide. But in step 1, they basically took 9 minutes each to interview each other. And from a timing perspective, it was about 1 minute per question. So they went through those questions, and then they moved on to step 2, where they shared their statement with each other and brainstormed career options that were related to, they actually brainstormed 3 career options related to their statement, and then chose one of those options and really delved into that and brainstormed what are the actual actions that I could take while at Wharton to really pursue this career. What would I have to do? And the reason step 2 was so important is that the idea around calling and mission can really be, it can be theoretical, it can be aspirational, and we really wanted to ground the students and give them the opportunity to see how they could really use this in a tactical, actionable way on their journey, even starting today. So they went through the 35-minute breakout, we prompted them on time, then they all came back at the end into the big Zoom meeting again for step 3, where they had the opportunity to then update their statement a final time. Or final time in the session, I should say. And that was the workshop. Oh, we did offer for them to share their statements in the chat and did a quick debrief, but that concludes the workshop portion of our session. I'm going to turn it back over to Sam.
Thank you, Jessica. So what I want to do now is share a little bit about the results of our process, now that you've heard how we developed it and got a little taste of the workshop itself. So as Jessica said, for 2 years, we ran a pilot. And when the students came to our preterm orientation in August, we divided the group up into control and treatment, but we had IRB approval, but we didn't tell them we were running a pilot. So the students in the control and treatment groups did not know that they were receiving different content. We called the workshop Career Fit, whether they were going through the career assessment or going through the calling and mission piece. And in the 2 years that we ran this, we only had 1 email come into MBA Career Management asking about it. So we know that the students either didn't care or were not aware. And so with these 2 different experiences that Jessica explained, we got some really interesting and different results. So what resulted? The first was when we looked at the 2 groups, the calling and mission group and the control group, the calling and mission group obtained their internships more quickly. And so 87% of these students by the beginning of April had already obtained their internships, whereas 70% of the control group had obtained their internships at this point in time. And that there was no statistically significant differences for the type of industries they were looking at, or if they were looking at later time startups. So there was something about clarifying your sense of calling that helped people obtain internships more quickly. And we speculate that it may be because students were able to be more selective in the roles that they were pursuing as well as be more persuasive, be more passionate, be more compelling as candidates as they went through the process. So we think there's something that really helped them. And then the other research finding we had was the calling group, the people who were in the treatment group, 8 months later had a stronger sense of calling than the control group that we had not been through a workshop, which is actually pretty significant when you think about it, because in August, we did a 90-minute workshop, and then we sent these students 3 emails, and 8 months later, they retained a greater sense of calling. So we found that the combination of our workshop and our emails was a successful intervention in prompting people to view work as a calling. So we were really excited about these 2 findings, and they just add to the list of benefits. But the thing that's, I think, really an interesting benefit that we see here was the obtaining an internship more quickly, because this is something that's behavioral, not just like a perceptual or attitudinal. And then the other piece of research I wanted to share with you is we had a group of master's students from the Penn's Graduate School of Education actually go through and systematically code the calling statements written by the students who were in the calling and mission group. And when they did this, we found that there were some themes. So the statements tended to revolve around the strengths in the template. I want to use my strengths. And these bucketed into strengths, skills, knowledge, expertise, interest, passion, people's networks, and then the impact. So sometimes it was like the object of the impact being like a general business or organization or a specific group. Types of impact. Some people wanted to have a singular impact, such as start a company. Other people wanted to have multi-staged impacts. They wanted to start a company so that they could develop products that would make people's lives better, or so they could be in philanthropy later. And then other people also gave personal reasons and motivators for their impact. But what I wanted to call out about these broad themes is that students who wrote calling statements that had statements about specialized knowledge or expertise, such as like biopharmaceutical research, or wanted to impact specific groups or specific geography. I remember someone wrote about Haiti and wanting to influence people in Haiti. People who wrote with greater specificity actually had even stronger senses of calling than people who wrote something that was more general. So we're just really excited to add to our understanding of calling through this MBA journey. And so with that, I just wanted to call out a couple next steps, and then we'd love to take any questions that you have. So first, we had our Canvas course copied for you. So if you would like to go through our Canvas course, see the videos we have and the extra content, we'd invite you to do that. One of the things that we go into detail into the Canvas course is the research that we did with our alumni as well, which is really fascinating. And something I'll tell you about that research is that our Wharton alumni who report having a higher sense of calling correlated to 3 outcomes. 1 is they are more satisfied in their current jobs. 2 is they are more satisfied in their overall career progression. And 3 is they actually make more money. So it's really interesting to just kind of, again, see these benefits of calling in the real world with our students. And then lastly, we just wanted to invite you that if you're interested in learning more about launching a program, about having a calling and mission for your students, Jess and I would be happy to speak with you. And our emails are here on the slide. And with that, we want to, and Jess pushed out the link to the Canvas in the chat, so it's there for you. I'm going to stop the screen share, and we'll turn off the muting. I think the mute default was set for you as participants. And we'd just love to take any questions. You can feel free to unmute yourself, or you can put any questions you have in the chat, and we'd love to answer them for you.
I actually had a question, and this was great, Sam. I'm going to be following up with you. When I think about individuals having a calling, MBA population is not necessarily the first thing that pops into my mind. So apologies for that. When I think of calling, I think of our students who are in the liberal arts and things like that. I'm curious, did you see differences in the level of calling in the industries that people tended to go into, or not particularly?
Yes, that's a really great question. And we were wondering too, like, how are the MBAs going to respond to us talking about work this way? And what's really interesting is we have hundreds of comments in the feedback forums, anonymous comments, and no one was like, oh, this program's ridiculous, or this is out of place. Why would we talk about this? Everything is basically like positive to neutral. So it was really interesting for us too. We did see a little bit of a spike in people's sense of calling who were pursuing careers in healthcare. So that tended to be a little higher. And I think people in social impact were a little bit higher as well. But overall, we saw across all industries, some people had a higher sense of calling, some people had a lower sense of calling. But yeah, it's been a really interesting journey with the MBA population on this topic, and they really have embraced it. And
it's been interesting to see the types of statements that they write for someone going into hedge funds and hearing how they're really connecting it. You wouldn't necessarily not think, that they're that they actually have this broader impact that they're looking to achieve.
Absolutely.
Can you hear me by any chance? Good.
Yes.
I was wondering, particularly the impact that you had from the people finding internships quickly or more quickly. Was there any data that showed they were better able to take their stories, their past stories of doing that kind of thing, or did they speak more volubly about the constructs, the things that they chose that voiced their calling?
Yeah.
And I apologize if I have an echo.
No worries at all. No worries at all. It's a great question. So what actually happened? Because we are a bit speculative. Well, in part, we don't know what actually happened because, we'd love to have like transcripts of these interviews. But I will say this, we asked students on a recent survey how they were using their calling and mission statement. So it weren't open-ended questions, they were scales. And students who said that they use their calling and mission statement to pitch themselves specifically, so that would be in a networking appointment or it would be in an interview. Those students, the more they said, I use this to pitch myself, they were also more likely to have an internship more quickly.
Okay.
And then other items related to that, that was the strongest item statistically that related. But the other items that related were, they said it gave them a sense of motivation in their job search. And they also said that they used it in selecting the right companies. So we do know that there's a correlation on those three things.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Mike, add one other quick comment. I'm thinking long ago in graduate school of reading Freud and the phrase Leben zum Arbeiten. And you get joy in your loving relationships and joy in your work. Here we are.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, psychology is known for a long time that work is a really important part of our lives, and getting that right is something I think we as career professionals are really investing in people's lives to do. Yep. Thanks for your comments.
Thank you for the really interesting presentation. I thought it was great. I'm the managing director for a dual degree between the School of Arts and Sciences and the School of Engineering and Applied Sciences called the Bagelos Integrated Program in Energy Research. So all of our students are super interested in energy, like they want to make a difference on that front. And so I think that it would be super cool to have some kind of calling program collaboration. I was just wondering if you are only offering the opportunity to people affiliated with Wharton, or is that a kind of a call across other offices in the, at Penn?
Jess, do you want to take that?
We're willing to help anyone. I mean, we would love to collaborate. So thank you so much for your feedback, and I'm looking forward. Just reach out to us, and we can talk about what's next.
Right, awesome, thank you.
Yeah, I think we're really interested in sharing this program as well as seeing how other populations of students relate to the experience of this program. So we'd be happy to chat with you.
I just wanted to say thank you so much. I found your study, your research also really, really interesting. So thank you for that. And I had a similar question to the one that was just asked about if it'd be relevant outside, because I work with Penn Cap, and we while introducing our students to graduate studies, we organized a workshop called Finding Your Why. Is grad school the right fit? And so we were looking at these issues about calling and what inspires you, what trains you. I was just forgive me if I'm not articulating this too well, but I was just wondering. You mentioned in one of your slides that sometimes calling is a matter of privilege, and very often people from underserved backgrounds will be thinking not exactly in terms of calling, but in terms of being financially independent, etc. So, how much would the fact that people who have callings find internships faster, how much of it could be attributed to an alternative explanation? I mean, I'm just playing devil's advocate here of, say, systemic issues, and how much of it would be, related to calling. I do absolutely understand even other related research, thinking of, say, a book like Habits of the Mind, that's not based so much, not Habits of the Mind, sorry, Atomic Habits, which talks about how when you think in terms of identity, think about habits in terms of identity, you're more likely to succeed. And so, I mean, just thinking in terms of this is who I am, as you hone your skills, might be quite close to calling. So anyway, I think I've said a lot, but yeah, just all over the place.
No, thank you. Thank you for your comment. So, I mean, we do put in control variables in our statistical model. So we do look at gender, we control for gender, race, industry, and international status. So we didn't have a clean variable that we could put in at the time for economic status, which I think would be one marker of privilege. Although I think race, gender, and international status are also markers of privilege. And even after we control for these variables, we still see the same outcome of people getting to their internships more quickly. And I think it's similar to what you're saying. It's a part of your identity. When you really identify with your strengths and your talents and you're seeking to develop them, then as Jess was explaining, it becomes the internal becomes externalized. You're seeking to use those strengths in the world through your work. And so I think you are tapping into greater levels of motivation, greater levels of mastery and learning. But specifically for the job search process, as John was asking earlier, I think you're able to bring more passion. And another model we didn't share here, but that we've seen is we survey our employers about our students after they interview. And we have found that one of the greatest drivers of viewing a candidate positively is basically this variable we have around like energy and initiative. And so I think when people are tapping into the best of who they are, which is really rooted in positive psychology, then they're able to bring that to the interview space and the networking space and really being a compelling candidate, as well as maybe go through the ups and downs that requires that motivation to be persistent through the job search. So yeah, great questions. But all that to say, I think in terms of privilege, everyone benefits by identifying their strengths, tapping into the motivations of their strengths, and looking for opportunities to be able to use their strengths in the workplace. It doesn't remove all the barriers, but it closes them. And I guess the last thing I'll say is we've all heard about the differences between men and women in salary gaps, and we see that everywhere. We don't really see it when our MBAs launch, but certainly in the MBA population of alumni, we see similar data to other data sets. And we did see that female alumni who had a stronger sense of calling closed the pay gap more. So that was also something interesting, thinking about how maybe calling can be a tool to help be a part of dismantling some of the problems that we've seen systemically. Any other comments or questions for us?
This was really great, Jessica and Sam. It was wonderful. It is, in a way, shattering of some stereotypes that we develop about MBA students. And that, to me, was the most empowering thing, that we don't see people monolithically, that if they are in a certain track, then their goal is to, as Jessica was saying, to run hedge funds, that there is a human, philanthropic, cathartic, and empathetic drive that makes them take that career path. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for noting that and sharing that. Interestingly, our research team who coded all the statements said the same exact thing as you. They said basically like, these are really beautiful statements. Like these aren't exactly what we expected. So I agree. I think anything that begins to break down stereotypes is positive. Jessica, what's your calling? It's your calling and mission statement.
I was just going to say our calling and mission statements are in the bios on the conference site, but I was going to encourage all of you to try on that template and try writing your own statement.
Mm-hmm.
Happy to chat with anyone about what comes up for you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
This was fun. Thanks everyone for joining.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for giving us the opportunity to share this topic with you. It's something we're really excited and passionate about. So we appreciate you spending this time with us.